Hey everyone, and welcome back today to a recording with a tech founder here in Australia. We're going to talk about transforming your business with enterprise AI. Obviously, we've all been talking about and learning about AI, but the big frontier for some is enterprise and larger business and how it actually applies in the world of big business. So today I'm joined by Todd Pedler, who is an accomplished software entrepreneur. And through his company, Centric Minds, they've been developing an enterprise SaaS, software as a service product, for the past 20 years. But today we're not talking about the Centric Minds product, are we, Todd? Instead, we're talking about a new product you've been developing at Centric Minds for the past 2 years called New Dialogue AI. So, first question off that, welcome, Todd, is what is New Dialogue AI?
Thanks, Brandon. As you mentioned, we've last 20 years been building an enterprise SaaS product in the internet document management workflow space. So medium to enterprise companies use our technology to communicate across the business with thousands of people. And there's a lot of software in this space. We happen to be one of those players. But over that time, we've learned a lot about the challenges with content creation, content management, how you distribute that content securely to different audiences. And we learned a lot of lessons from that, which, as you mentioned, allowed us to work on or develop an AI product over the last 2 years.
So it's been born out of the existing business.
It has. And I guess if I briefly explain the difference between, listeners may have heard of unstructured versus structured content. So structured content would be transactional data that sits in like a CRM. It's very structured. It's transactional. You interface with it by searching. You might put in a client name. It brings you back a result. Yeah. Unstructured data is all the stuff you create as part of your day. Office documents, PowerPoints, PDFs, video. So all of that is financial. So all the stuff you create as part of your job or even personal is all unstructured.
Yeah.
In the world of content management, you would use a tool that manages all that unstructured data. So that led us to how do we use AI to improve the discoverability of unstructured data? So using the lens of our existing product, we started playing with AI technologies in 2022. And actually, before that, we started using a product called copy.ai, which was one of the first ways of using generative AI to create copy. So we were using it in 2021 to generate like copy for our social media channels, even doing blog posts, that sort of stuff. And copy AI, we're using a very early version of ChatGPT 3.0, I think. So this was 21. 22, we started looking at open source large language models. People may have heard of LLMs. And then something big, a big event happened in November 2022, which was the launch of ChatGPT, which has obviously become synonymous with AI and really the Firebrand brand.
Yeah, it's got us all trying the app too, isn't it?
Absolutely. Most people use it to do ad hoc stuff. I use it to do a whole range of things that I use frequently, I need to do frequently. So we've all been exposed to use it in some degree. Through 2023, we started building our own MVP. And in 2024, we really released our first production version of the product. And now, this far into 2025, we have our first few enterprise customers using New Dialogue AI internally to do a whole range of things for their employees and the business.
Tell me about mid-2023, your internal Skunkworks project and the chatbot creation. Like, why was that a milestone? What does that mean?
Yeah, we named the chatbot project New Dialogue as it encompasses a new way of conversing with your data using conversation, which is exactly how you would interface or work with ChatGPT. It's conversational interface. So we have this mindset of a search paradigm where we would put into Google a certain limited number of words, whereas a prompt or your conversational prompting is more as if you and I are carrying on a conversation. So that the larger your prompt inside something like ChatGPT, the more contextually relevant you can get an answer from, generated from.
Okay, cool.
ChatGPT.
All right, there's a long time there, but what I wanted to ask you was, before we talk about the purpose of the product, has there been one piece of resonating feedback from clients who've been able to utilize it initially that maybe you were expecting what it's been everything? We made that assumption, tested it. We're seeing people really getting their minds blown away.
Yeah, and the way we offer new dialogue to companies is we propose a 60-day pilot. There are a couple of reasons for that. We want to learn what the taxonomy of their organization is, where their data is stored, what the type of content or data they have. Is it more structured or is it more unstructured content? So in that 60 days, we can tune the use of our tool inside the enterprise. We can also decide who has access, how they're going to use it. So there's a range of workshops that we run with clients to understand what's the best use case we can set as a target for this technology to prove in the context of the organization. And then in that 60 days, we go and try and prove it. So we worked in the last 12 months with people in engineering, healthcare, financial services who are all undertaking pilots, and some of them have progressed to production. But to answer your point, we've seen a whole range of unexpected wins. One comes to mind, a customer in healthcare had recently engaged a consultant to review all of their enterprise bargaining agreements with employees, and they have employees all over Australia in each state and territory. And so there was 8 or 9 different EBAs, and they asked the consultant to come in and say, look, we want you to review these 30 to 40 page agreements, bring them up to on par with what might be national law changes in the law and HR policies and whatever. So the consultant went and did that. And they came back with a 2-page overview of what were the key things missing from all EBAs, what were the differences between the EBAs, what states had differing laws compared to these states. So it was generally a good report of this is the way. But that took someone quite a bit of time. It cost X amount of dollars. So we just thought, why wouldn't we just try to upload all the EBAs into new dialogue and ask these questions? Like, what are the differences? What are the things we're not abiding by from a national child policy framework or even an employment law framework? So new dialogue allows you to crawl websites externally. So we crawled certain Australian government department websites for information. And within a few minutes, new dialogue had generated a report. That report wasn't too dissimilar to what the consultant had generated. So that's just one example, and then I can go off and give 3 examples, but it was quite exciting to see the technology generate that, because it took what is quite a clump of unstructured content, make sense of it, and then using a process called RAG, which is a retrieval augmented generation, it was able to create a definition or an output that was really, again, similar to what the consultant had reported now.
Yeah, okay. So what would you then say, you touched on it there, but what would you say is the purpose of the product, and how would you say it potentially differentiates? Because we're all using ChatGPT in our personal lives, and a lot of us would starting to become intrigued about using it in our work life. But what would be the purpose of this product?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of people are using ChatGPT at work, no question.
Yeah.
In fact, it's become a concern that it has its own label. It's called shadow AI. You can go and find out more about what shadow AI is in detail, but essentially individuals are using external generative AI tools to do their job. Now, you may think that's great. It's highly productive. They're getting more work done. The challenges are around the privacy and security of organizational content. So if I'm working in a healthcare company, I'm working on a new drug, I'm exposed to patent information and recipes about how drug manufacture is made. That's information I don't necessarily want to share with a third-party AI service. And that's probably on the extreme. Less so just general businesses with operational information. I might have access to the company's financials. I've got the last 3 years of financials, profit and loss, what the directors got paid, everyone's salary. Again, that's information I probably wouldn't want to share with a third-party AI tool, but people are doing that because using these AI tools on that type of data gives you really compelling results based on what information you'd want to find out. So what New Dialogue is, think of it as ChatGPT, but it runs internally inside your business. In fact, it gets deployed to your own private cloud, and then it connects securely to your internal data and content. So if you're running things like SharePoint, OneDrive, if you're using Google, all of those tools internally, again, aren't necessarily accessible to anyone outside the company. So again, why would you share them with an AI outside your company? So New Dialogue is about building a technology that sits inside a company and allows employees to connect to their internal business data, and then using a very similar ChatGPT interface, chat with your content and data privately and securely.
So it sounds extremely relevant for a business to try and have their employees be tooled up in an AI sense, but to focus on work-related matters, and that's it. The word that comes to mind is private. So talk to me about the privacy and the private nature of this platform compared to maybe something like ChatGPT or Copilot or others that are out there, and why it's probably more of a benefit to businesses than they just may not realize.
Yeah, for all the things I've just mentioned, privacy is really what we set out to develop. We wanted to build something that you create your own moat. You use an AI that infers your data privately. We don't share infrastructure or data with anyone. We don't use it to train any models.
So these are the reasons why someone watching now is probably thinking, why wouldn't I just use ChatGPT? It's a $1 billion company. It's got all the bells and whistles. It's so easy to use. I love how it prompts me and I prompt it.
Yep.
It's so conversational.
Yep.
Why wouldn't I just use that?
And people do. I offer a ChatGPT enterprise product. It's expensive, especially if you've got thousands of people.
Yeah.
But again, beyond just chatting with generalized knowledge, the next step of connecting to your internal information, we wanted to provide an alternative approach to doing that, which is where the AI itself or the large language model is securely contained with your own infrastructure. So again, you're not sharing anything internally that may be confidential or sensitive.
That should rail is in place even if someone was to.
Yeah.
Because it's a private
Correct. So
system.
there's basically a hard line between running our software internally securely versus sharing your data with a third-party service.
How important is it with the data and the platform being hosted locally or domestically here in Australia?
I won't use this forum to talk about data sovereignty, but it is a concern. There are laws around data sovereignty that in Australia that are mostly about privacy, and that comes down to who owns the information, who acts on the information. If the information is used in a certain way, under what purview of the law is it covered by? Well, you're covered by Australian privacy laws. If your data is sent offshore and inferred and processed, then that landscape changes.
Great. All right. On the topic of privacy and security, so I'm right in thinking that the intention with New Dialogue is to provide an AI to companies where it doesn't train itself on your internal and private data and share what it knows about your company with a third party. But that sounds almost legal in nature, but I've come to understand that. Talk to me about, yes, why that's so integral and who it would speak to, whether it's a CEO or a CTO or a board member that's looking at rolling out mass AI adoption across their enterprise business. There's some key questions they're going to have to be able to answer and feel comfortable with.
Yeah, and look, data sovereignty is a big one. So questions those C-suite people should be asking is, where does our data reside? Where does the processing of our data happen? Is it happening in situ inside a silo in Australia? Is it being sent offshore? Is it being mirrored off with an offshore service? So they're questions C-suite should be asking. Back to your point about the training side versus RAG. So if you've looked into AI, you've probably seen the acronym RAG, and I appreciate there are so many acronyms flying around with AI. It's hard to keep up with everything. But RAG is, again, retrieval augmented generation. So we don't train your data or content. Our AI doesn't train itself. So training is a very expensive, time-consuming process that even when you finish the training exercise, from that moment forward, it's really obsolete. It's out of date. The very next day, when thousands of employees keep adding content to a service in which we use RAG to allow people to chat with, the training of that model is only up to the date where you finish the training. So most people are using RAG now because it's far more cost effective and it's more time sensitive. So you can essentially deploy New Dialogue, allow it to access content that you decide that you want employees to chat with, and be using it almost immediately. Within a minute or two, the AI is up and running, and you'll be getting contextually relevant answers from New Dialogue about your content and data versus going through the time-consuming and in some cases headache effort of training a large language model. So that we don't do that at all. And the reason we chose RAG was we wanted to build a technology that could be deployed cost effectively for really any size organization. If you look at the cost of training an LLM, it's cost prohibitive for most businesses. And then The downside is that it's only relevant up to a certain date and time, and beyond that, it won't know anything. Retrieval augmented generation is the approach we're using, and we have some black box technology in what we've built, but essentially think of it as searching with superpowers. So when you put in a prompt into New Dialogue, it will generatively create a response that is contextually relevant to your data and content. So it knows about your business, it knows about your turnover, it knows about what your employees think, it knows anything you give it access to. But if you went to ChatGPT and you work for, I don't know, a big company, let's for XYZ, and you said, tell me about our performance over the last 10 years, it doesn't know anything other than what's publicly available.
Correct.
About XYZ. Whereas we're the inverse of that. We know everything that's happening inside the company based on if you're prepared to share that with New Dialogue.
Yeah.
Yep.
So key question there is, I am to have different levels of user controls and access within that platform, because you said something before about how there's still sensitive information within the private environment, for example, salaries, or being able to anonymize people with respect to maybe feedback or sensitive feedback.
Yeah, you hit it on the head. So that's really the gist of what New Dialogue is. It's a management console on top of an AI. So when you set up New Dialogue, you can decide which employees have access to which content to chat with. You might have people in marketing have access to all the marketing related content, people in finance only content. And this is typical if you look at the taxonomy of any organization, people typically divide and conquer their information based on departmental operations. So you've got people in marketing have their folders on the drive, or within the intranet, they have a marketing section and so on and so forth for all the other departments. So New Dialogue basically silos your content that you can then decide who can chat with what content.
Yep.
So that's the administrative layer we've built that interacts with a whole range of different security protocols that you would typically find in organizations, things like Intra ID, which is how you manage people accessing other applications inside the business.
It doesn't feel like this discriminates across industry. It seems like it's applicable to multiple different verticals and industries.
Yep.
But it is new. It's New Dialogue. But no, seriously, it is new. What would you say are the biggest adoption challenges that you're seeing or that you anticipate to see with this tech?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I wouldn't say it's been smooth sailing at all. And I think part of our naivety was thinking everyone would love to use these tools, but it's certainly been even sort of 50-50 people who have been very enthusiastic and optimistic about using these tools to help them understand the complex nature of who they are as an operation. So again, if you're working in healthcare or government or financial services, there's going to be a lot of content about what you do in the public domain, how you interact with the public, what you sell as a service or a product. There's a lot to know. And so if you're a new employee and you're being onboarded into a company, in most cases, it's going to take weeks, if not months, to come up to speed where you're effective inside their organization because the amount of stuff you have to know. One way to accelerate that learning and adoption for a new employee is to give them tools that allow them to ask general questions and get relevant answers, as if you have access to a subject matter expert in the business. So imagine Mary or Bill, who's been in the company for 30 years, and they know everything about I know where this goes. I know what you have to do when that happens. So imagine someone on day 2 or 3 having access to something like that. Through using an AI, they can ask questions. Oh, this happened. What do I do? Where do I find this? So a lot of it is search driven in mindset, but it's also discoverability. If this happens, what should I do? The New Dialogue will know contextually, yeah, you were referring to this. This is a policy. Here's the policy, a link to the document. But here's a gist of that 30-page PDF in 100 words.
Yep.
So that's the upside of this technology. The downside is really, I'll be honest, this fear that this is going to replace people's jobs. Look, all technology has done that. Remember that when the internet first launched, the threat of all bookstores closing because we can buy books online, we thought about all the people who lost their job in those bookstores. We did. But as we've had iterations of technology cycles for the last 30 years. Technology will replace it, but also generates jobs. So what it takes, it gives back. And we say with New Dialogue, it gives you a superpower. Instead of doing the mundane work that we will get stuck with, crap, I've got to spend 3 hours putting together a report or a presentation, or I've got to go away and research this and that about our competitors, or my clients asked me to do this. So there's mundane effort that we've done time and time again that we say with something like New Dialogue, it gives you back 2 out of the 3 hours you were going to spend. So that's the upside, that it really arms anyone doing anything with AI. It gives you a superpower.
So would you say an important reason for how to get around that adoption apprehension is the 60-day pilot? Like you talked to before,
Exactly.
2-month pilot and opportunity to work hands-on with the business.
Correct.
And unlock. What exactly is it that ideally you'd love to be able to unlock, being able to do?
Yes. Yeah. And that's important. And it's also important that not everyone who's done the pilot has decided to move forward with production either, because for a whole range of reasons, they're not ready. They have to make changes in whatever they are doing in the business before they want their team to adopt this. So there are lots of valuable lessons learned, but not everyone progresses. But I think hats off to those organizations we work with who have done pilots, because they're ready and willing to unleash an AI technology with their team in a controlled and private environment.
I guess the pilot part of the process also allows a customer to feel like they're engaged, but also still reserve the ability to make their mind up and work out if they do want to progress and do this over the next 12 months to really sink this in. But it also gives like New Dialogue an opportunity, and you in particular, a chance to learn more about what's important to that type of client. I know it's not the system learning, it's humans learning, but it's quite fascinating to hear about. There's enough of an appetite that people want to consume it, but not everyone's. And I'm interested, mate, like, why haven't some people wanted to progress? Is it because they need seniority or management sign off, or is that it will make too much noise within their organization? Or
There's a lot just in that question. So all pilots we run, we see the data. So we see all the prompts. And in the pilot we just ran recently, there were like 2,500 prompts that I think it was about 30 people who were involved in the 60-day pilot had put into New Dialogue. So we read through these prompts and we can see and get an understanding of how they're approaching the use of this technology. And on one end of the spectrum, you've got a search-oriented mindset. One prompt has popped up quite frequently is, where is the PowerPoint on research? So again, where I'm searching, so it's a search mindset, whereas more successful prompts are as if you want to have a conversation. Can you create me a 500-word report on Q1 numbers related to XYZ customer, and how does that relate to results from 12 months before? So that's a more sentence-oriented prompt where the answer is far more valuable and contextually relevant. But we get to see all the prompts. And to your point, that there's a big knowledge jump between reorganizing your brain to think, I'm not at Google searching, I'm, again, having a conversation with a subject matter expert. And what I learned that is the more complicated and more detailed my prompts are, the richer the response from New Dialogue.
So I've got a question here I want to ask you. So some users, you say, genuinely hate or strongly dislike the idea of using your AI.
Yeah. I think they have a strong dislike for any AI.
There's a broader question.
Look, there are some people in roles where they are performing unnecessary or busy work. I call it just, you've heard the term, just doing busy work. And these people exist, we know them. So what AI does is it highlights the unnecessary nature of the work they're doing. And I think the immediate response is to fear this technology is going to take away my busy work week. In our workshops with our pilot, we actually address this. And we say, instead of doing that boring, dumb shit, mundane work, use AI, and then that fully rewards you to actually go and expand the type of role you're working in. So that's where the employer comes in. Let's understand that we've identified these people who probably spend 50% of the time doing unnecessary busy work. We can fully enrich them by giving them access to different projects or more workload because we're using AI to uplift the dumb shit work that they're doing. So that's how we position it. That's been very positive, but you can see the response from certain individuals who know they're doing busy work. So it's about working with them and helping them to understand use this to take care of that shit. You don't want to be doing it. Like, it's soul destroying. It's mundane. It's not rewarding.
So you help an organization roll out a solution like this for people who are maybe hesitant to not wanting to stop doing their busy work?
I don't have an answer for that.
Because you must admit, there are a lot of people that...
Sure. And I think what you're asking is, what does an organization do culturally when it knows that a percentage of their people are doing busy work? That's an answer for the employer. Not us, but eventually, as I said, the AI will highlight where the busy work is and it'll do it for you.
We talked about this, about people, they use new dialogue AI, just like they would ChatGPT. They just ask questions, but it knows more about your internal company data. So we talked about that. Talk to me about where the product has gotten to, because you've been building this for 2 years.
Right.
And you've been taking direction from where the market's heading and customers feeding back. But where is that right now? Because I know it integrates and it does quite big, cool stuff.
Yeah. I think going back again to using ChatGPT as the baseline, you go to a browser, you open ChatGPT, there's a window, you start entering your prompt, you get a result, and on you go. That's what we provide. There are 2 parts to new dialogue. One is an administrative panel where you do just that. And down the left-hand side, you've got options for connecting users to certain content stores, we call them. They're stores of content. And stores can be pointing to an internal SharePoint library, for example, or it could be pointing to an external Australian government website, and it's crawling all the content on that website for people to chat with internally. That's the administration. On the front end, we have a chatbot. And using New Dialogue Studio, you can create an unlimited number of chatbots. They can be both internal, private, but they can be external and run on your website. So one use case is a retail manufacturer has a long list of how-to guides for the type of equipment they offer. They decided to use in the pilot New Dialogue to allow the public to ask questions about these products. And all they're doing is accessing the user guides that they typically only give to you once you buy the product. So we're keeping their valuable intellectual property, which is their user guides, from the public. Yes, but we're allowing them to access through conversation. So when you go to the website, you go to a certain section of the website, the chatbot pops up and can I help you? And if you ask, what about product XYZ? It'll be like, here you go, would you like to know for more information? Very common chatbot we're all used to. Internally, though, privately, you can deploy a chatbot to different audiences inside your intranet. Again, marketing going to the section of the intranet, finance going to their section of the intranet. There's a chatbot tailored to that audience. So you can manage all these chatbots from one environment inside New Dialogue.
So it's customer service reinvented.
It's chatbot automation generation, but typically the chatbot is how users work with. Additionally to that, we have an iOS and Android app. So think about any organization where their workforce is out on site. They're at a building site or they're in a nursing home, or you have a distributed mobile workforce. Giving them New Dialogue on their phone allows them to be prompting from their phone about their content and knowledge. Like what's the policy on this? Where's the site plan for that? So again, when I'm searching, we're talking to a subject matter expert and it's giving us contextually relevant answers.
That's right. So it's like a private ChatGPT, but it understands your internal operational knowledge.
Correct.
You mentioned there's a new version of New Dialogue AI coming in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
What can you share about what's in the next version?
Yeah. So to answer your question, what have we been working on? We've been working quite heavily for the last 3 to 4 months. And again, the landscape of all this technology is moving really fast, and very often you've got to be careful what you bet on when you're designing and building a product, because you don't want to go down a road and realize you have to come all the way back. Although that's certainly happened to us through the years. But so what's coming in the next release of New Dialogue is automation. And people have probably heard about agentic AI, having agentic. Yeah, so agentic AI is really the idea of agents talking to agents. So if I've got a chatbot and I can identify you're another chatbot asking me a question, it's agent to agent protocol.
Okay.
So we're using a protocol that doesn't do that. It does something more interesting, we think, which is when you prompt in ChatGPT, it gives you a singular result. So you get a textual response, and so great, that's what I wanted. The next version, it allows you to put automation into your prompt. And one idea might be, write me a 500-word report on this client, and then generate it, put it into a Word document, and then send it to a channel in Teams or Slack. So if you think about those things, I would normally do them manually.
Yeah.
As a person, I would get the result from ChatGPT, I'd cut and paste it into a Word document, I'd save it to the Word document, and then I'd email it to 10 people, or I'd put it into Teams or Slack. So directly from the prompt bar, your dialer will do all that for you.
So you now have a role of creating a personal assistance person who's being you, but more efficient. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're excited about it. We're using it. It's still not there. It's janky. It kind of works at the time, most of the time, but sometimes it doesn't. So we know it's not ready for prime time use, but that's how we're evolving the technology. To your point, it does some assistance for you.
So what you're saying is we are starting to get to a point where you can go and log into other platforms as you and operate to then take the work that's done and disseminate it through email or maybe through a direct message chat.
So there are tools that already exist that do those things, just as vertical sort of offerings. So you can get, and then there are AI tools that'll operate an external web browser if it's a person, or it'll go and read all your emails so you can chat conversely with all the 10,000 emails you've received this year. So those tools are existing in market. We're bringing some of that capability into one house where it connects securely with your content.
Okay, that's cool. So security, once again, private element, the ability to be within your own environment, but not lose out all the functionality and the ability of the platform. That's really cool.
Yeah.
So, because we all get bogged down with administrative work. Administrative effort is big, but also like content generation, management, and you might have a view on that. When I think of content generation, I think of content for, say, social media as an example, right?
Yeah.
Which would then require an element of creative thing. How would it go with helping with that side of things when it comes to content, generating creative content? We've all seen what you can do with this massive new extension of ChatGPT, and you can create images and video. But how relevant will that become, do you think, for your customer set, given that some clients will want that more than others?
Look, it's a really great question, and I haven't touched on some of what's happening under the hood with New Dialogue, but for those who are interested, we context switch between different LLMs depending on the prompt that you give it. So we hot swap we use varying open source LLMs, and then we're using LLMs from people like Anthropic, who use Claude. But we're also using things like Mistral isn't one of the main open source LLMs we're using. There are others we're using as well, but essentially based on the prompt type, it will determine what LLM it uses to generate the result from. Some LLMs in the open source market, I would say, have better personalities than others. So when you say, I want you to create some copy that's flirty, or it's curious, or it's happy, those action words, we look at them and then we determine which LLM we would use to generate a result. It's the same for generating something still working on, which is image generation. So some LLMs do a better job at generating graphics, others do a terrible job. So we're still trying to get that right. That's still not an offering in our product, and the problem with generating images, it can be taxing the infrastructure to generate graphics and textual content. But yeah, it's a great question. It's interesting what you get based on what LLM you choose to use.
Yeah. So we'll talk about how that you can act as your own personal assistant, and it can get to know you, and get to know your personality and your tone. And where you're going to end up, and does it remind you of a movie that was released a while ago? I won't say the names, running over with Joaquin Phoenix. And
you're talking about Her. Yeah, that's a great film. And if you haven't seen Her with Joaquin Phoenix, I definitely recommend you go and watch it. You mentioned personal assistant earlier. I think that's the high order bit of personal assistant, where it's not just helping you, it's actually learning to know who you are based on your interaction with it. I think that's the ultimate personal assistant. I just think when I think personal assistant, I say, why don't I have it on my iPhone? I have Siri, but Siri couldn't organize anything for me. Why doesn't Apple generate it?
It shouldn't be there already.
But where's the personal assistant for iOS? Android as well, Google. But where's that personal assistant on device that connects to my other apps? I was talking to a friend just last week who does a lot of work in banking, and he's right. It's like my personal assistant, while I'm sleeping, is going away and trying to find a better deal for my home loan. And when I wake up, it's like getting a notification on my screen. Hey, Todd, I've found a better deal. Do you want me to start the process of moving your mortgage to this other bank? That would be a killer personal assistant.
Yeah, do it. Okay, and then I'll never go by the
Right.
way.
Yep.
All right, so perhaps that's how we'll experience artificial general intelligence, AGI, but similar to the film AI starts to express emotional intelligence. Bring that back for me in relation to new dialogue and enterprise clients. So where can we get with this?
So new dialogue is not AGI. And look, I think there's a lot of debate about artificial general intelligence, and there are some who think we're already there, and certain companies have got the capability but are not sharing it with the world. And then there are others, if you like, listen to Ray Kurzweil about the singularity, where still, I think it was 2032 is the year of the singularity, which will have human intelligence, artificial human intelligence, and at that level, which is AGI. In the context of a business, it's hard to predict where we'll be next year, let alone next decade. Yeah, but I definitely think AGI is real and it will happen. It's just a question of when or has it happened.
Okay, so to round it out, new dialogue, AI, how do people try it out? What's the best way to go about that?
Yeah, and you can just go to newdialogue.com. You can start a trial. It'll ask you to upload some content or connect to a external website that'll go and crawl so you can chat with it. And we've got people just running a monthly plan. And then if you're a company and you want to extend that to moving new dialogue in-house, that's the business model we're currently pursuing. We want to work with organizations who want to internalize AI operation, do it safely and privately, knowing that we're not training our AI on any of their data and we're not sharing it with any third party either.
Breen, Todd, that was a great summary.
Thanks, Brandon.